Hi everybody, it's Celestine. I'm here with my brand new microphone to talk to you a little bit about my LARP. If you don't know what a LARP is live action role play. And in the words of Momo O'Brien, a live action role play is basically an adult game of make-believe. So my LARP that I play in is called Attaway. If you haven't been to this channel before, then that's that information. If you have, you've heard me talk about it. So we just had our third event, not this past weekend, but the weekend before that, and it was pretty chaotic. It was a lot of fun, but it was pretty chaotic. So I would like to get started by just kind of going over some of my favorite events that happened, or my favorite things that happened over this event. Just silly things like that weren't necessarily involved with a larger plot. One of my absolute favorite things that happened, probably over not just this event but the entire game so far, happened Friday night. It was kind of when we were in this weird place between being in character. We weren't quite in character yet, but we also were not quite not in character. And there's a group of us standing around in the parking lot outside the community house, and we're just talking, and there's a group of veteran players, and then there's one new player, and all of a sudden we hear the sound of a Nerf gun go off. And we all kind of look at the new player, who's like, sorry. He had been trying to put his Nerf gun in his bag, and it had gone off. And we were just kind of like, okay. And we weren't quite sure what had happened, other than, we didn't know at that point if he had hit anybody. And then all of a sudden, this other player who is over here, goes, could somebody take care of that, please? So when the Nerf gun went off, it had hit him in the arm. And like I said, we were not quite in character, but not quite not in character. So that was the other thing, is none of us knew, even if somebody had been hit, whether or not it was going to be played as in character or just waved off as an accident. And I asked the player later, about it. And he goes, oh, well, if it had been in the chest or torso, I would have just waved it off, because chest and torso are lethal. If you get hit in the chest or torso with a bullet from a gun, it's lethal damage, and you go into mortal jeopardy and you have to have surgery. And he's like, but since it was just my arm, and my arm was just maimed, I thought, that'll be fun. There's a grower right there. So that'll be fun. So yeah, so Friday night, one of our characters got hit in the arm by friendly fire on accident. It was great. So also Friday night, which kind of started the thing, the brewers, which my character is a brewer. My character's name is Melly Flynn, and she is a brewer, which means she's responsible for making the brew, that in this setting is kind of illegal. We all work at an illegal still, by the way. For those of you who haven't seen any of my videos before, the setting of Attaway is, it's not Earth, but it's kind of like a 1920s prohibition theme. And the thing that is prohibited is not alcohol, it is brew, which is a substance that you can drink that will temporarily give you magic powers, along the lines of gifted, because there are people in the game who are gifted, who are born with magic powers. And so the people without the magic power said, oh, we want to have the gifted be second-class citizens, but also we want to have magic just like them. So we're going to create a way to give us magic powers, and since we're not gifted, it's cool. Yeah. So there's that commentary going on. But yeah, so my character is a brewer, and Friday night, one of the things that happened was that the entire Attaway still was told by one of our investors that we would be doing some things for him in return, in order to basically get our good name back, because there were a lot of rumors goes into previous plot from the previous 2 events. I definitely suggest that you check out those videos. But also, the brewers were told that we would no longer just be able to keep our brew recipes in our heads, that we would have to write them down. So we were given these props to play with and a book to write down our recipes in. We were told to write down the recipe, the instructions for how to make it, what happens if it gets spilled, and then draw a picture of it. And the props we were given were bottles, water bottles about this big, and we were given water beads. They're little tiny beads, but when you put them in water, they expand, of different colors. And we were given food coloring. And also, like, we had these little plastic, like Tupperware containers, but they were like this big, that had like different kinds of like plant stuff in them. And so we actually created a physical representation of these brews, and I actually took a picture of them, which I will put in the video about here. But one of the things that we made was a brew called Quiz Pop. Quiz Pop is a brew that for humans, when they take it, it allows them to read a tag that is not for their family. So Melly is a brewer. If I were to find a knowledge tag that said specifically it was for growers, or for tinkers, or runners, or gifted, any of the other 4 families, then I would not be able to read it. And I would have to take it to a member of that family to be able to know what it said. But with a Quiz Pop, I could drink the Quiz Pop, and then I would be able to read the tag, with the consequence being that I would have to read the tag very slowly out loud. So one of the other things that we were told Friday night was, why don't you take one of these brews that you make and just leave it outside, see what happens. So we were like, well, we don't want to really put out something that's going to make who knows what, throw ice or fire or slag. So why don't we leave out the Quiz Pop? Which led to, on Saturday, a squirrel giving us information about our rival distillery. I believe it was about the rival distillery. I wasn't actually there when it happened. I just heard about it later. But yeah, so squirrel got a hold of the Quiz Pop, and for animals, apparently it makes them smarter, and it makes them able to understand things that they didn't understand before. We do have gifted in the game that are wild speakers, which means they can talk to animals and talk to beasts. So that means like your regular everyday woodland animals, and it also means your fairies, your non-humanoid, human speaking fairies, creatures. And so the wild speakers told us, yes, we can speak to animals without them taking Quiz Pop, but they don't always make sense, and they think differently than we do. With the Quiz Pop, they make more sense. So basically all the wild speakers now really want us to keep Quiz Pop on hand, and they kind of want to create a network of animal spies. So that's the thing that happened, which directly led into Sunday morning at breakfast. We were like, you know what, fuck it. We are giving Quiz Pop to the goblins. And one of the goblins are Hen Hen and Rooster. And Hen Hen and Rooster, especially Hen Hen, really love eggs. So Hen Hen's vocabulary is usually along the lines of egg, have egg, want egg, give egg, egg. We gave Hen Hen Quiz Pop. And what happened was a 5-minute rant about the University of Brightboro board, because when she was at the university, she wrote a dissertation on the theoretical applications of Catalyst, and the university board rejected it. Yeah. It was beautiful. It was so beautiful, and it was hilarious. We had a crowd of people just crowded around this table listening to Hen Hen talk about the theoretical applications of Catalyst. And it was so freaking hilarious that even the staff member who was NPCing Hen Hen is a Muppet, by the way. So there's a staff member dressed all in black, sometimes with a blackout mask on, who is manipulating Hen Hen. Even that staff member, who is absolutely brilliant, by the way, kind of couldn't get through the whole thing without laughing. It was amazing. It was pretty great. Yeah. So basically, we have learned that we should just always keep Quiz Pop on hand all the time, for reasons. And apparently, one of our other characters, name of Orpheus, who is a runner, one of our 2 scamps. We have more than we have more than 2 runners, but there are only 2 scamps, and that's Orpheus or Orphe and Sal. And so, turns out that Orphe's auntie, old Mrs. Doherty, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but I'm going to say Doherty. Turns out that old Mrs. Doherty is actually not what she appears to be. She's actually Granny Bones. Not quite sure what Granny Bones is. We thought Granny Bones was Fae, but apparently Granny Bones is something else that's older than the Fae. For reference, basically Granny Bones is the in-game version of Baba Yaga. She lives in a house with chicken feet, and also snorts gifted bones in a powder form like cocaine. And yeah, so that was, yeah. So we found out that Granny Bones and old Mrs. Doherty were the same person Saturday night and Sunday, which unfortunately the player who plays Orphe had gone to bed, so was not there. So Sunday morning, very first words out of Sal's mouth when Orphe walked in was, "Hey, Orphe, so we learned things about you last night," because apparently Granny Bones had told stories about Orphe as a kid, including them playing in the cat box, the litter box, and eating cat poop. And Orphe was not pleased. And the thing is that Orphe's player is just absolutely brilliant with words. So Orphe is brilliant with words. So Orphe has so much charm. It's ridiculous. So whenever anybody needs to be talked out of anything, whenever like there's constables or water, because Attaway is a water treatment plant. Oh, excuse me. Attaway is a water treatment plant. So sometimes we get water treatment plant inspectors to come, inspect our water treatment plant. Whenever anybody like that needs to be fast talked is around, we call Orphe. Hands down, Orphe's the person to call. So so the reaction that Orphe had, I cannot remember the actual words, but it was something along the lines of, I've seen that woman dancing naked in her nightie, drunk while singing opera, and now you're telling me that she's a gifted bone snorting fake creature thing, and just like slam their head on the table. It was hilarious. It was a great moment. Let's see, any other just random things that I can think of. No, I think that's it. As far as just like my favorite random things that happened. We had a new player whose character, Cora, was just an absolute delight and a gift. New player, very first event, but they like stepped forward and they took charge and they like just put themselves out there, which I would not have been able to do. I did not do my first event. Didn't really do until the end of my second event, which I have talked about in detail in another video. But I really admire that about them, that they were able to just put themselves so far out there in their first event. But I don't know. I think they have more LARP experience than I do, so that's probably why. Never mind. Okay, so another thing that was really great was the boxing matches. We had more boxing matches Saturday night. Woo! We haven't had boxing matches since the first event. And so this one of the things that was really, really great was that Alessandro, who is the proprietor of the Gilded Lantern, was able to be there because that player is normally only there on Saturdays, but he was there for the entire weekend this time. And so he got to participate in a whole lot more than normal. And that was really great because Saturday night at the boxing matches, there was an exhibition match between Alessandro and a grower named Mitzi, who is exactly who you think she is based on her name. And the two of them in the boxing ring just kind of basically flouncing around and not even really trying to hit each other. At one point, they stopped in the middle of the fight to admire each other's nail polish. That was freaking hilarious. Oh man. Oh gosh, so much happened at the boxing match. I'm going to get back to that. Like I'm over 15 minutes in and I haven't even really started talking about the plot. So I'm going to do that now. So that's it for the little moments. Even if I think of something else, that's it for the little moments. So I'm just going to go into the plot. I'm going to really just talk about the things that were specific to my character because, okay, now I have to get it somewhere. I have to get comfortable. I'm just really only going to talk about things that were specific to my character because I don't know everything that happened. Like, even the things that I found out about later, like, I still don't know everything. I'm sure there are things that happened to other characters that I have no clue about, that I wasn't even told about later, just because it always happens. There's just so much going on at any given time. You don't know, and you can't know everything. So I'm really just going to touch on the things that affected my character directly. So Friday night, we get there and, we have the meeting with Mr. Drake, who is one of the investors or the investor of Attaway. And he gives us things to do on Saturday. There were 10 possible runs that we could have done. And we, one for each district. There are 5 districts and 5 active districts, I should say. And we had to only choose one per district so that we wouldn't bring the constables and the police down on us. And so, one of the ones that, which was the only run that I went on, or that my character went on, was to go to the Wharf District, where our rival still, who has been disseminating the bad brew, has set up a new still. And so our job was to go in and, knock all the Lightfoots out and take their still and make it our own. Because we don't want them in business, and if we can have another still for ourselves, then that's all for the good for us. But there were other things to do, but that was the only one that my character went on, and that happened on Saturday. We did all the runs on Saturday, but Friday night, after all of this, the brewers were sitting down and they were making all their stuff, and we did all that. So around 12:30ish a.m. I'm thinking, you know what, I'm tired, I'm driving 30 minutes to get home, so I'm going to go. I'm going to drive home. So I get all of my stuff together. I have my big brown bag strapped over my shoulder. I've got my lantern, I've got my boffer fists, I've got everything to go to my car and to leave for the night. And I walk out of the community house and I hear, Wendigo, the Wendigo's attacking. I'm like, well, shit, I guess I'm not going anywhere. I guess this video is not going to get monetized. None of my videos are monetized now anyway. I'm not even worried about that mess. But that's a whole other video. Anyway, so we see the Wendigo. And we go after the Wendigo. And we learn that we can't get too close to the Wendigo unless it wants us to. Because every time we try, we hear the guy who's playing the Wendigo scream, by my voice, area fear. And then I don't know if it was the mask or if he had something, but there was like this screeching noise. And we would all have to fall back because none of us can resist. I don't think any of us have the resist, or actually we do, but that's another thing. But we didn't want to use it right then. And but finally, Chuck the Duck got close enough, and we hear rending, and Chuck falls. Chuck is down. And this is important for later. But what I did not know at the time, that I found out later, is that any rending blow, no matter where it hits you, is immediate mortal jeopardy. It does not matter where it hits you. Unlike with the bullets from the guns, if you get hit with a rending blow, you are down. Mortal jeopardy, you need surgery. So Chuck is down, and So we run, or like some people run and they get him up and take him. I get on the radio, I need a grower. There was growers right behind me that I didn't realize they were there. We only have one grower this whole event. One grower this whole event that has the skill to do surgery, which will also be important later. And so my character kind of has this unhealthy obsession with the Wendigo, because like unhealthy obsession is pretty much my character personality. That's also been talked about in a previous video. So, and now my character has the ability to throw fireballs. So I go up there, my very first time trying to lob a fireball, and of course I miss. But we have found out two things from this encounter. One, Winter's Grasp will stop it for a minute. I mean, and I don't even mean like 60 seconds. I don't know how long. It'll stop it for a little bit. Two, there's a character named Hex whose gifted ability is Wither, which means he can wither any limbs. And it will work on the Wendigo. We found that out. It does work on the Wendigo, but it does not work for long, for just a few seconds, and the Wendigo will automatically regenerate. So we learned those two things from this encounter, and I threw a fireball at it. I missed, but it made the Wendigo run. Or Melly threw a fireball at the Wendigo. She didn't hit it, but it made the Wendigo hightail it out of there. Melly is following this thing, and I hear Sal, who's like Melly's kind of little sister, kind of person. They're kind of getting really close. I hear Sal behind me go, "Oh no, she's got that look in her eye. She's not going to stop." And so I get to the edge of the woods where I'm pretty sure I saw the Wendigo. Melly gets to the edge of the woods. I'm trying to be really good about talking about my character in third person so that there's no bleed. I mean, I don't really experience bleed that I know of myself, but anything that I can do to not experience bleed. So Melly gets to the edge of the woods where she's pretty sure she saw the Wendigo go, and Sal comes up and grabs her by the shoulders, like Melly, you gotta stop. You can't get it tonight. You can't go by yourself. Come on, we gotta go back. And it took a minute. It took a minute to kind of talk Melly down. And one of the things that I did not plan on, but just started doing, and that it ended up being a really great thing that I just did throughout the entire weekend, was this hand right here. I painted because when your character becomes a mutant, you have to phys rep that mutation. So I painted it, and I'm going to put a picture here. And so that's what my painted hand looked like. It's supposed to look like Burns because she throws fireballs. And so one of the things that I started doing was that whenever Melly gets upset, especially when she's angry, the hand just will twitch and do this kind of stuff. And so I was doing that, and Sal finally was able to talk Melly down. We went back to the community house just in time for Chuck to be up and about, and up and with no complications, because Chuck the duck has is distinguished to be the very first player character of Attaway to go into mortal jeopardy and to need surgery. So right now, none of us are probably going to die, because the way that works in this game is we all have our marked cards. And every time you have surgery, there's a hole punch in your mark card. That's your mark. And the more marks you have, the more likely you are to either have a complication or to die. Complications don't get introduced until you have a few marks on your card. And then a few more marks after that, death cards get introduced. So whenever somebody has to have surgery, you need a grower who has the ability to do surgery, and you need a gifted that has the deck of fate. And then the gifted will stack their deck based on how many marks your marked card has. And so none of us at this point had any marks in our marked card, so we're pretty much all guaranteed to live for a few more events at least. So Chuck, first player character to get surgery, or at least Mortal Jeopardy related surgery. I have been corrected on this several times because there was another character who apparently had surgery earlier in the night, but it was a chromed surgery, which meant he added a chromed spine to his back. But that's not, your card doesn't get marked for that. So I have been counting it, but every time I say that he was the first character, that Chuck was the first character to have surgery, this other player pops up and was like, no. So, okay, the first character to have surgery, player character to have surgery, based on Mortal Jeopardy needs. So, then I went home. So Saturday comes, breakfast is there. Teddy, one of the other brewers, is tempted to try. This is when we first started talking as the brewers about doing something to the goblins that involved brew. Teddy was tempted to pour one of the brews on the goblins because, again, we were supposed to write what happens when you spill them. So we thought, what better way to do that than to spill them on ourselves or on unsuspecting NPCs? Although spilling them on ourselves probably wasn't the best idea given that we're brewers. And so, where's my bottle of water? So yeah, we're brewers. So, like Melly spilled the fireman's fancy on herself. She already throws fireballs. Probably not the best choice, but oh well. And the funniest part was when we found out that Lawrence had spilled the Forge Master filter on himself and was apparently really badly burned. And he was like, it's fine. So that was fun. So my iPhone suddenly was like, you're full. You can't make any more videos because there's no more storage left. So I had to do something about that. Anyway, so Lawrence as a character is basically, it's fine. No matter what happens, it's fine. At one point Saturday night, Lawrence, busted into the community house, door flew open. Lawrence flies in, he grabs his bag, he's on the way out, and we're all like, Lawrence, dude, you need help? And he's like, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, and he's gone. So, something is definitely going on with Lawrence. And it's been very subtle until this event. Last event, he spent about an hour sitting outside on the swing set by himself. And that was, I think, the point where most characters started to go, something's going on with Lawrence. Maybe we should check and see if he's okay. And Lawrence's, entire thing is, it's fine. It's fine. And yeah, but the whole rushing in and out and it's fine was definitely our first indication, the first non-subtle indication that something's going on with Lawrence. And Lawrence better watch out because my character has insatiable curiosity. Just saying. Anyway, so Teddy was wanting to try and spill a brew on a goblin, but then it was like, I don't want to spill Winter's Grasp or Fireman's Fancy or anything destructive. So and then he didn't want to actually spill it on the Muppets because the staff spent a lot of time on those. And I'm thinking, you could mime it. You don't actually have to spill it, but whatever. It led to the whole quiz pop thing Sunday morning, so that was great. So there were talking squirrels, and there were just, okay, so this isn't a big plot thing, but this was hilarious. So we had a new person who was NPC this time around, and they NPC'd, of course, several different characters, but this one took the cake because this NPC swam his way into everybody's hearts. I'm sitting at the Gilded Lantern, or Melly's sitting in the Gilded Lantern, and all of a sudden here comes this NPC who is already just dead drunk and wants more alcohol. By the way, this is a dry game. We don't actually drink alcohol at this game, and we're not allowed to. That's one of the rules. But we do have drinks in the Gilded Lantern that represent alcoholic drinks, but they aren't actually alcoholic. So people are trying to talk to this guy and kind of at one point, somebody's telling him, hey, here, lie down on the couch. And he starts to like lie down on the floor. He starts to like get down on the floor. And we're like, no, honey, no. Like, Izzy was like, no, honey, you can't, not on the floor. And he's like face down on the floor by the time she realizes that's what he's doing. And like, have to like physically pick him up and like practically like dump him on the couch. And they, Izzy and Cora and Melly start like trying to get information out of this guy. He tells us that his name is Fish. We find out that he was a captain on a boat, but he has lost his boat in a storm. So he's very sad because he lost his boat. He also gets very sad when anybody tries to take away his liquor, because we decided, okay, Fish, we're going to help you get another boat, but we're going to help you get sober because we don't want to put you behind the wheel of a new boat until you're sober. So here we have to take the tequila or the vodka or whatever it was he was supposedly had. We have to take that away. You need some water. He cried because we took away his liquor and gave him water. And then the best part was, then comes in Vinny. Vinny, who is a Tinker Vinny, because there's actually two Vinnies now. Vinny T and Tinker Vinny. That's confusing. Anyway, Tinker Vinny comes in, who has no clue of what's been happening or what we've been telling to this guy. And I think it was Izzy goes, oh, look, here's Vinny. Vinny's a tinker. Vinny can help you make a new boat. Vinny's going to make a new boat for you. So Fish gets up and goes over to Vinny and goes, you make me new boat, and just wraps his arm around Vinny and starts to cry on Vinny's shoulders. And Vinny's like, yeah, buddy. What's going on? So that was pretty great. So there was talking squirrels. Apparently there was also a talking possum at one point. And I don't know kind of what was up with that. There was a tea party hosted by the Fae. I don't know if any of you remember, but E2 ended with us maybe kind of sort of dumping bad brew into the Wild Hall. Which at the time seemed like the lesser of two evils, with the other one being near the city's water supply. So, and like Hex's whole thing was like, fuck the Fae, and kind of honestly Melly was like the same way, and it was basically like, would we rather potentially piss off the Fae or put this shit in the city's drinking water? This shit's fatal, so to humans, we don't know necessarily if it's fatal to Fae, so fuck the Fae, we're going to put it in the Wild Hall, I guess. Well, the Fae are not happy about that. So they invited us to a tea party to explain ourselves. There's apparently factions within the Fae. Some, like Knight, who believe that we did not do it on purpose, that it was a mistake, that we weren't trying to hurt them. And then others, like this unnamed Fae, or at least I didn't get their name, who was like, no, humans are evil, humans are bad, they did it to hurt us. And then the Fae Queen was there, and the Fae Queen is tied to the land, so even though she has not ingested any of the bad brew, it's still making her sick because it's affecting the land. It's being absorbed partially into the soil, which is then it's being absorbed into the plants. It's causing some mutations among the plants, and then the plants get eaten by the animals, and then it affects the animals, and then the animals get eaten by bigger animals and beasts who are then affected, who then affect like trolls and things like that. Speaking of which, 3 trolls attacked, and they were obviously very, very aggressive, and they were obviously like affected by this bad brew. And so Melly was there because Sal convinced her to go, because Sal is like, hey, Melly, this is an opportunity for us to see if we can find out more about your curse, which isn't really a curse, or it wasn't intended to be a curse. It's just sort of kind of happened to function as a curse, but it was not intended to be that way. And so Melly was like, well, fine. So Melly's sitting at this table. She's not happy to be there. And very quickly, it becomes obvious there's not going to be any chance to talk about her situation, because obviously getting the Fae to not kill us right then and there was the more important thing. And so Mellie's sitting there and her hand on the table just starts to twitch and to do this. So finally Sal notices Mellie's hand and puts her hat on it. So like Mellie's hand is twitching underneath Sal's hat, and it was great. Thank you, Sal's player, for that if you're watching this. So yeah, so the trolls attack. Poor Alora is another gifted, and Alora is a wild speaker, and Alora tried to charm the trolls, and it did not work, and Alora got hit and needed a grower. And this was important because it'll come back later. And then, basically at that point, Mellie was kind of like, if I don't leave now, I'm going to do something I shouldn't. So she was kind of like, I'm noping out right now. And so Mellie left. But we were told before the event started that there would be a face-hosted event on Saturday and that there would be food, but depending on our own ideas and also our character, we may want to bring our own snacks because it's the Fae and their idea of food would probably be a little off. And so the food was leaves, dirt and worms, and squirrel brains. The dirt and worms was like chocolate pudding with, chocolate crumble and then like gummy worms in it. And the squirrel brains were Rice Krispies treats with pink icing on top. And so Mellie was not having any of that, which means that she's eaten it before. By the way, I don't know if anybody from the game is watching right now, but yes, that is a question. If that was a question on your mind, yeah, Mellie was able to refuse it because she's eaten those things before. As for the rest, Foig. So Mellie noped out of there, and at one point she got a letter from her sister, which had some wording in it that she's not sure about. So Mellie's kind of like having this existential crisis because of this letter that her sister sent her. And so I think that's pretty much it for the day. I mean, there was more stuff going on, but not a lot of it was directly related to Mellie. I tend to spend a lot of time in the community house, observing other characters, because I think that's just as fun. And sometimes, if you don't, you miss things. And I mean, you miss things if you stay there and don't go out. I mean, it doesn't matter. You're gonna miss things, but sometimes I think that staying in the community house lets you observe some things that you wouldn't, some character moments that you wouldn't otherwise see. It was either first event or second event. I can't remember which event it was. I think it was first event actually. The gifted had to go out and deal with a rogue gifted who was setting stills on fire, and they dealt with it by convincing him to not hate distilleries or brew anymore, and then invited him to come stay at our still. And so a character, Margaret Louise, was not happy with this resolution because Margaret Louise was convinced that he was going to turn on them and burn down Attaway. Anyway, and so because I stayed in the community house, I got to see Margaret Louise stomp in, pace back and forth, muttering to herself about this thing. And then I got to see the confrontation between her and Hex, who had apparently led the initiative to convince the gifted to stay and to not hate distilleries. And I got to see that, and that's a thing that a lot of other players didn't get to see because they didn't stay in the community house. And I was glad I got to see it. I mean, to me, that was a great character moment for both Margaret Louise and Hex. And I just really enjoy that I got to see that. So I do spend a lot of time in the community house because I'm going to try and spend more time in the Gilded Lantern, but it is a little bit of a walk. And I don't necessarily like making that walk a lot. But yeah, so then skipping ahead, we went on the run. to the Wharf District to take over the still. We fought the Lightfoots who were there, and we questioned one who was not unconscious, and we got a name of their leader, Ingrid. And he was laughing at us, saying that we were going to regret everything we had done. And he, not him, but the other three, I think, that were there, managed to slip out when we are, he managed to slip out when we were not looking. The other three managed to slip out when we were not looking. Sorry, my mom sent me a text and it appeared on my phone screen and it distracted me from what I was saying. But yeah, so the other three managed to get up and leave when we weren't looking and got away. And so we took over this still. And it went pretty well. Yeah. And so, Saturday night, one of the best things happened. Two of the best things happened. One was a really fun thing, and the other one was a really dramatic thing. So a thing that has been, it started as a joke in our Slack group, wherein the player for Sal started it with like wanting to go on a cheese heist, like just cheese heist became like this thing. And like, it just kind of got picked up by all the other players. Cheese heist, cheese heist, cheese heist. And then last event, it was hinted at with this NPC showed up who was like, I'm going to start a thief club, and we're not going to steal stupid things like diamonds and money. We're going to steal fun things like, I don't know, like goats and cheese. And so it was hinted at last event. Like, staff had taken this just like stupid thing, this funny, adorable thing that, you know, happened in the Slack, and had actually like incorporated it into the game. So this event, here comes the NPC. It's here. There's this enormous cheese wheel, and we're gonna heist it. We're gonna steal this cheese wheel. So they go on the cheese heist, and at one point, I got to see it. Like, this cheese wheel was like this deep and like this big around, required 2 people to carry it. 2, not 4, 2 people to carry it. And they had to distract so many people. And then they get it to the fence to sell it. And they get 2,000 imps for it. And they come back and but the fence has apparently told them, or somehow they found out that it was not real cheese. It was non-dairy cheese product. And then somebody starts counting out the imps that they got paid for it, and realizes that underneath the denomination number for these imps, for every single freaking one of them, is written counterfeit. So they lifted not real cheese and got paid not real money for it. It's like, with this staff, like, we couldn't really expect for the cheese heist to be a legitimate cheese heist and not somehow be something else. And it was great. And yeah, so the cheese heist happened, and I think Sal's player can now die happy. But after the cheese heist, we another NPC, Bag of Bones, which is kind of like a minion of Granny Bones, showed up. And I should mention, before I get started on this, like, throughout the day, Hex and some other players were working on a plan to defeat the Wendigo that involved all of the fire-wielding people up front, along with Lawrence with Winter's Grasp. Lawrence's favorite brew is Winter's Grasp, so like they load Lawrence up with Winter's Grasp so he can keep it from moving too much. Load up all the fire people, because the Wendigo is weakness is fire, and have growers behind them. Hex is going to be behind them, withering its limbs as much as possible. Growers behind him. Sal coming in to take anybody who falls, to get them out of there, out of the line of fire. And so so we had this plan, and Bag of Bones shows up and is like, hey, the Wendigo's out and about. We're going to go fight the Wendigo. So we're all like, okay, let's go. So actually, like, instead of trying to lob fireballs at it, because I had already missed once and was not very confident in my ability to keep hitting it or to hit it enough. I actually ended up, or Melly actually ended up with Crow's shovel, boffer shovel, with an item that allowed her to set the shovel on fire. So actually, when we got to the Wendigo, and I'm like hitting the Wendigo, I'm hitting it with this boffer shovel, going brutal by fire, brutal by fire, brutal by fire. So like, we're in there. It's like, and all of a sudden, Alora steps up. Like, we're in there fighting the Wendigo, and Alora steps up and says, "Detect beast." And the player playing the Wendigo is like, "Yes." And so she says, "Charm, speak with me." And the Wendigo's response is to screech and hit her in the torso with a rending blow. So she falls into the underbrush. Like, you know, like I wouldn't be able to actually like fall on the ground, because if I fall on the ground, I'm not getting back up. But she fell like on the ground in the underbrush away from the battle, and to the point where like I don't think anybody really saw where she fell. And even though Sal was supposed to be getting people out, I don't think Sal at that point was in a place to really see what had happened. And so like Alora just laid there until the end of the battle. Poor Alora. And so we keep fighting, you know, winter's grass over here with Lawrence, like Ezra's throwing fireballs, I'm whacking away with the shovel that's on fire, and at one point I hear rending, and I feel it just blow hit my hand. So I'm like, well shit, I'm hit. So I cry out and I fall back. And at this point, remember, I did not know that rending blows were mortal jeopardy no matter where you get hit. I was not sure. I thought maybe it was it, or possibly that just my arm was maimed and I wouldn't need surgery, just a grower. So I kind of stepped back out of the battle. A character named Indigo takes the shovel from me to step forward and hit the Wendigo, but I managed to make it through almost the entire battle because Indigo later said they didn't really get a chance to hit it. So, yeah. But we beat the Wendigo. The Wendigo died. Unfortunately, we were not able to get any information from it because its body dissolved pretty much immediately. So that was unfortunate. So I was like, hey, clarify, I did get hit with a rending blow. I got hit in the hand. Is my arm maimed, or am I in mortal jeopardy? And I got told, you are definitely in mortal jeopardy. And I was like, oh, great. I just immediately collapse into the arms of the nearest grower, who, Melly, screams Melly, and we just take off at a brisk walk towards the community house. So at this point, Alora has been found and has been taken to the community house, where our one grower, Rick, is currently doing surgery on Alora to put her intestines back inside because she got hit in the torso. And then here comes Melly, also in mortal jeopardy. And it's like, well, shit. So I get put in a chair because luckily the players with me knew better than to try and put me on the floor. I mean, I was going to get on the floor, but they were like, no, let's get in the chair. I was like, okay, great, chair. So I'm in this chair, my head's lolled back, my arms are like this. And poor Sal, who had been, trying to help out Alora, is like, now, holy shit, now Melly's in mortal jeopardy. And, so I very vaguely hear Rick say, she'll keep until I'm done with this. So Melly is out there bleeding from a mangled arm, while Rick has to finish up with Alora. So finally, so Rick gets done with Alora, comes to Melly. Of course, they have to ask for my mark card. I have to give it to them. Hex is the one doing all of the surgeries, and oh gosh, I may have to actually separate this into 2 videos because there's still a shit ton of stuff that happened when I get finished with this. Anyway, so this is the moment where I get really deep into the actual role play and being my character and the acting portion of it. I'm so deep that and also it doesn't help that I can't hear often really well. And it's not that I can't hear that something's being said. I don't understand what's being said a lot. If I can't look at somebody's mouth, sometimes I just won't be able to understand what they're saying. And it's not a lack of being able to hear the sound. It's just that the sound doesn't seem to make any sense, if that makes sense. So I'm like lolling my head and, like making sounds of pain. And apparently Rick had to ask me a couple of times if I accepted, physical role play, and I said yes. And so he's like, "Where'd you get hit?" I say the arms, I put it on the table, and he's like, "Oh no, you've broken bones in 2 places or several places, so I'm gonna have to reset the bones. It's gonna hurt." Reset the bone, and me screaming at the top of my lungs. And, I could feel him, like, once he set the bone in 2 places, I could feel him, like, stitching, like, making the stitching motion. And, of course, Melly lives without complications, because this was her first mark. I'm so proud. Oh, hold on. Oh, no, I don't have it. We have to actually turn them in at the end of the game. But yeah, so Melly has her very first mark on her mark card. I'm so proud. And, yeah, so, oh, man. So that happened. So my character had her very first surgery, and it was an intense experience, and I had a lot of fun with it. So I'm going to stop this video here, and and then I'm going to finish the story in a second video. You know what? Fuck it. You know what? No, I'm not. I'm just going to keep going. So actually, the Wendigo stuff happened after the boxing, and I skipped over the boxing because what happened at the boxing matches, other than just good fun and hilarity, actually really ties in directly with what happened Sunday morning. So after dinner, it was Mary's Tide. Every event in this game corresponds with a holiday for one of the patrons. And so this was Mary's Tide for Drowning Mary. So for Mary's Tide, we all had a very fancy get-together dinner with some of the priests of Mary who were invited. And Melly was very, very rude to one of them, because Melly has nothing to do with the patrons, and really has nothing for the priests either. So Melly was kind of rude to one of the priests of Mary, Drowning Mary. But so after Melly had surgery, Sal was like, so it's the same with the decks, fate. So there are 5 live cards, 1 corresponding to each patron. There are 5 complications, 1 corresponding with each patron, and 5 death, 1 corresponding with each patron. And so it just so happened that the live card that Melly received was Gilded Frida, which Melly does not have a personal patron, but Gilded Frida would be her patron by default, because she comes from Hightown, and Gilded Frida is the patron of Hightown. So I thought that was a great coincidence, and Sal was like, "Hey, Melly, Gilded Frida saved you. Sal's very devout." And Melly was like, "No, Rick saved me." So Melly's very much like, patron didn't do shit for me. It was the grower. The grower is the one that saved me. Melly's very much about science over religion. I am obviously not, being pagan as well as a scientist, but Melly's very much science over religion. It was not the patron that saved me. It was the grower. So of course the gifted hex had a little bit to do with it as well. So anyway, so we had dinner, and then after dinner we cleared the table and everybody helped set up the boxing ring. And Danny tried to box drunk again, which we kind of all expected, and it was just as hilarious, because this time he actually tried to fight. I don't think at the first one at E1 he actually really tried to fight, but this one he did. He still lost, but he at least tried to fight this time. But yeah, so then poor Sal just cannot get a break, and I think I'm kind of breaking that thing where I said I would only really talk about the things that directly affected my character, but whatever. Poor Sal, first boxing matches at E1, her very first match, she goes up against a character named DeLuca, who at the beginning of the match, when they're supposed to shake hands, pulled her forward, said something to her about one of the other characters, and then said that, charm or intimidate or something. I don't remember what the call was, but you have to fight with one hand behind your back. So handicapped Sal from the beginning of the match by making her fight with one hand behind her back, and she lost the match. So before the boxing matches this time, I heard all the Gifted talking to each other, all but Hex, and talking about how they were not going to use their gifts because it just wouldn't be fair for those of them who had gifts that would help them in the boxing ring. So Sal's first match in this set was against Hex, who is gifted, and again, Hex's gift is to wither limbs. So the MC says fight, and very first words out of Hex's mouth is by my gesture wither right limb, by my gesture wither left arm, and Sal is left with no arms, and just the look on Sal's face of perfect betrayal was just heartbreaking. Poor Sal cannot get a break. And we all got a free refresh for this event. And so Sal chose to use her free refresh, but it didn't help because Hex just withered her limbs all over again, and she lost the match. And Hex is the only person who got booed by the entire audience, the rest of the still, because of this. And two of the other Gifted were like, hey, we all agreed we weren't going to use our gifts. That's just not right. And so luckily, Hex did let her have a rematch after everything was over. And she won. So that was great. And later on in the match, in the actual boxing sets, the people who were running it allowed Sal to have another match, and this time got put against Crow, who is Sal's father figure and mentor and retired boxer, come out of retirement for just this one match. And it was pretty great character stuff right there. We had the exhibition match I talked about earlier with Alessandro and Mitzi. And then, right before the very last match, the door bangs open, and in comes Ingrid, leader of the Lightfoots, with a minion canonically known as the Brutant, the Brood Mutant, which is technically what Melly is as well, because mutation due to bad brew. And one of our NPCs, I'm not, other people knew who this NPC was, but I didn't. But it was one of Attaway's people who had been captured. And Ingrid comes in, and I don't remember a lot of the actual words that she said because there was a lot of whispering going on while she was trying to do her thing. But the basic general gist of it was, Attaway, you've been a thorn in my side. You've been fucking up with my shit. You've been fucking with my shit. You took my still. So I'm not going to deal with it anymore. I'm going to take everything you have. I'm going to take all your shit. And so meanwhile, while she's doing this monologue, Alora comes to Melly and is like, hey, I have purged brew. I can purge the brew from this mutant. And Melly is like, no, that'll kill it. That'll kill him. And Alora was like, yeah, exactly. And just about right about that time, somebody said to Ingrid, we don't kill. And Ingrid said, well, maybe you should start. And which immediately in Melly's head was like, well, that's the best reason to not start, is we don't want to be you. And so, that was another thing. Somebody else came to Melly and was like, hey, should we purge this Bruton? And Melly's like, no, that's who they are. They kill. We don't kill. It's not who we are. Melly is very, 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 very against the idea of killing anybody, in this confrontation. And so this keeps going on. And finally, Izzy steps forward and says, by my gesture, purge brew. And the Bruton goes down. And then kind of what I had been waiting to happen since it started, but everybody was listening to Ingrid and not doing anything other than whispering amongst ourselves. Once the Bruton went down, it was just a rain of packets. Anybody who had a gift or an ability or an item that let them throw packets of some sort, threw them at that moment at the, like, just a rain of packets with just brutal by fire, brutal by slack, or whatever it was, just like chorus of these calls. And I don't know for sure because I was watching the Brutant, but maybe some of them were thrown at Ingrid. I don't know. What I do know is that Ingrid was wearing really good armor, and if something was thrown at her, it did not seem to faze her one bit. So one of the important things about this game is that the staff and the directors of this game were really interested in not having killing being a very easy thing to do. So you cannot, like, you can, like, you're physically capable. Any character is physically capable of killing another human being. Like, this rule does not count for fey creatures or beasts or anything that's not human, but for a human being, and this includes the Brutants, because they are human, even though they're mutated, they are human. Any character has the ability to kill another human, but it's not without consequences. If you kill another human, you drop immediately to 0 vitality and to bleeding and crying, and you need a grower to come out of it. Now, there are 2 skills that you can take that will mitigate this. The first is coping mechanism. So you have to take on a coping mechanism that has to be self-harmful, such as drinking, gambling, smoking, something like that. And so if you then kill a human being, you still drop to 0 vitality, but you do not have to go into bleeding and crying. But you do have to engage in your coping mechanism, and you do still have to find a grower to talk about your situation and what just happened in order to restore your vitality. The second skill is iron in your soul, and that's kind of the advancement of coping mechanism. Iron in your soul, if the character has that, then your character can kill another human being without remorse, without consequences, but only if you have both of these 2 skills. And you have to, of course, expend advancement to get them. So any character can get these skills, but you have to choose, like, okay, I have this advancement. Do I want to use it to get these skills, or do I want to use it for something else along my family lines, or that will advance my character's personal plot? So it is kind of a sacrifice. If you do want your character to be able to kill humans without consequences, you're going to have to, at least for a little bit, sacrifice something else that you want. Unless that's part of your character's makeup. So, of course, Izzy does not have iron in her soul. So after she purged the Brutant, she went to bleeding and crying. So at this point, Ingrid takes her Brutant and leaves, and everybody in Attaway is really upset. Crow especially, like, gives this motivational speech that didn't motivate Melly very much, because it was very much of, they came into our home and they did this to us, and so we're going to give back to them exactly what they gave to us. And Melly is, of course, very against this. And Alessandro steps forward and is like, hey, I totally agree that we need to do something and that this was, like, a terrible thing, but maybe we should step back and kind of realize what we want to do, and like, rethink how we're going to answer this. To which Crow was like, okay, I hear you, we'll do that. And so the night went on. The Wendigo attack happened after that, the Wendigo battle, I should say, and the Wendigo defeat. After the Wendigo was defeated, then the visit to Granny Bones happened, and that is actually where we found out that it doesn't really matter that we defeated the Wendigo, because the Wendigo is kind of like a slayer, and whenever one dies, another one is called. So I made the joke, Wendigo, the gifted slayer. So we're basically like, well, fuck. And there's pretty much no doubt in anybody's mind that the next Wendigo is going to be bigger, faster, stronger, and not as weak. So we're going to have a harder time beating it. Yay! So Sunday morning, I've already talked about the goblins, so I can jump right into the big game off event. Fitz, who's one of the staff NPCs, who is basically the head of the runners and often the NPC we see most. Each family does have their own head, except I don't know if the Gifted does or not, but the Tinkers do, the Brewers do. Our head is Poe, and I'm pretty sure the Growers do. And Fitz is the runner's head, and also we see Fitz more often than we see any of the others. So Fitz gets everybody on the radio and is like, hey, we have a very special gift for Mr. Drake in appreciation for all that you did this weekend. So we need everybody to come to the community house so that we can give it to you, which for the players is the signal, okay, game off event's about to happen because we want everybody in one place. So everybody gets to the community house, and the big gift is a bottle of brew. Don't worry, this is water. And a big bottle of brew that Mr. Drake has given to us that we are invited to imbibe. And so people start, and things are going well. Then all of a sudden, we hear this screech start to happen. And it gets louder and louder. And Fitz is like, what's that? What is that? It's coming from the radios. I mean, it wasn't really. I don't know where it was coming from. I think Fitz probably had like a recorder or something, because it wasn't actually coming over the radios, or at least it wasn't that I could tell. And the screech stops, and it's Ingrid. And Ingrid is in our still. And Ingrid is going through the brews that we have, that we've made, calling out the brewers' names on these tags. And Ingrid drinks a Fireman's Fancy and then spills a big barrel of Fireman's Fancy all over the still floor and then sets our still on fire. And we're all stunned. We're kind of like, fuck. So the space that is used for the still is right next to the kitchen. So we just kind of like used that. It was like, is Rosie okay? Rosie is the staff NPC that takes care of all of our meals. And so like even when we're sitting there eating, like we get fed at every event. Like even when we're sitting there eating, it's all immersive. It's all in character, and it's really great. And so is Rosie okay? So Fitz gets on the radio. Hey, Rosie, are you okay? Rosie gets on the radio, is coughing. Like, no, it's fire. Help. So we all like take off out of the door. We go running around the building to where the still entrance is, and the still is on fire. And so Melly is kind of like, so still's on fire. I throw fire. There's fire elementals in there. That's probably not where I need to be right now. And everybody starts forming a bucket line because here's the door to the still area over here. Over here, outside, is the spigot with water. So somebody's like, bucket line. There's one bucket. So like everybody forms a bucket line, passing the one bucket back and forth so we can pretend to be putting out this fire. And then like somebody's like, somebody has to go in and get Rosie out of the kitchen, and apparently like there's other characters, like there's other NPCs that are in the kitchen with Rosie, like the orphans, the totally not Baudelaire orphans, of course not, are in the kitchen. They've been helping Rosie out. And Fish is in, like Fish, who has totally like taken all of our hearts, is in the kitchen with Rosie. And so, while there's a bucket line, we're trying to put out the fire, and some people are trying to get in and fight these fire elementals so that they can get in and save the NPCs that are in the kitchen. Here comes some Lightfoot NPCs out of the woods who attack us, and it's chaos, and like everything is happening all at once. And so Melly's like, this is what I can do. I can fight Lightfoots. So we start fighting Lightfoots. And at one point, one of the NPCs who isn't quite unconscious, like looks at Melly and is like, "You're monsters," which is really interesting, by the way. Like, why? Because these were not Brutons. These, as far as I could tell, were just regular Lightfoots. So to me, it's very interesting that they think we're monsters. And anyway, Melly is very angry and is like, no, you're the monsters. You're the ones that are putting out brew that does this to people, brandishing her burnt hand. And at that point, the NPC is like, well, we don't make you drink it. And Melly says nothing because Melly is not about to share her life story with, this Lightfoot goon. And at one point, like, Indigo is like shouting these I don't even know, like, woe be unto the unclean, and like this kind of stuff. It sounds really awesome. And like all of a sudden, here comes Indigo with these two NPCs that are already down, and just throws these packets, lethal bypass, not in bleeding and crying. And so like this is like, okay, so either Indigo has coping mechanism, which since somebody with coping mechanism does not have to go into bleeding and crying, you don't know for sure if that person just has coping mechanism or if they actually do have iron in their soul. But I think I found out later, I think Indigo actually does have iron in their soul. So like, but this was not something that was indicated at any point to Melly. I believe that Indigo had a conversation with some other characters, I found out later, where they said they indicated that they could do this, but Melly did not know. And I did not know. So Melly was appalled at what she had just seen, that Indigo had just killed these two people who were already down. And Rosie's out of the kitchen. She's got soot on her face and she's like crying. And then one of the orphans is out. The other one's still in. And this orphan's screaming for the other orphan. And here comes some more Lightfoots out of the woods. And we got to fight them again. And then Fish comes out of the kitchen. And Fish is in mortal jeopardy and has to have surgery. And it's just total fucking chaos. So finally we get everybody out of the kitchen, and like at some point, I don't remember when, but at some point it's kind of basically decided that the still is lost, that there's no point in continuing to try and put the fire out, at least not to save it. The still is lost. The still has burned to the ground. Fish survived his surgery with 7 marks on his marked card, with the idea being you're not supposed to be able to get more than 10, because once you get to 10 surgeries, the deck is completely stacked with death cards. Like you're not having a 10th surgery and getting out of it. So he had 7 on his marked card. So like later the NPC, the volunteer, who played him was like, he wasn't supposed to survive, so now I don't know what to do with him. So we all go back to the community house. We're all like in shock. Like Melly's angry. A lot of people are angry. Sal and Orphe are crying on each other's shoulders, like sobbing. Mitzi at one point was sobbing, which I have to talk to that player, because I want to know what happened to Mitzi, that Mitzi was crying and sobbing, bleeding and crying apparently, or maybe crying and not bleeding, not sure. And we're all just kind of like, what just happened? Like we just lost everything. Our still is burned to the ground. We have nothing. And Fitz comes in and is like, I need everybody to go start packing your things because we cannot stay here. And Sal is like, wait, we have to leave? It's like, we can't stay here. It's gone. And we start having these conversations again. Like some people are we need to go after the Lightfoots and we need to give them back what they gave us. Some people are like, kill all the Lightfoots. And you've still got these other people, including Melly and Alessandro on the other side, they're like, no, we definitely need to answer. They need to answer for this, but we're not going to go that far. So, and then finally somebody said, well, maybe we should not talk about this right now. Let us take some time. Let's get out of here, take some time, and then we can start to talk about it later. And so, of course, at that point, Fitz's player, the staff member, goes, okay, Attaway, that's game off. And we're all just like, what just happened? Which is actually really, really brilliant I love this staff so much because we're actually not going to be able to be at the same campground for the next event because they're booked. So staff is looking for somewhere else for us to play. So they worked that into the plot. Attaway is burned to the ground, so we have to be somewhere else. The characters have to be somewhere else. So it's not just the characters, but it's also us as the players who are going to be in a new, unfamiliar environment for the next event. The next two events. We do have a very bare bones calendar for the next few events. We'll be back at where we've been at, I think, in March, or it's either March or May of next year. I can't remember, but we won't be back at that campground with a new Attaway until next year. So the next two events for the two events for the rest of the year are going to be basically us being homeless. And what's really interesting is that the next holiday is Colvier's Day. Colvier, the host, is the patron of community and isolation. Each of the patrons, their dominion, they have dominion over opposites. So Colvier, the host, is community and isolation, which is so relevant. I mean, oh my gosh, this staff is just brilliant. They are so amazing. They have thought of everything. They've worked everything, that's happening outside of their control. They've somehow managed to also work it into the plot of the game, and it's brilliant. I love it. So, next event is going to be very interesting, I think, because I'm looking forward to seeing the interpersonal dynamics now between these two factions of people, and maybe there'll be another faction. Maybe there'll be people who go, I don't really know what to do. But right now there seems to be two factions of kill the Lightfoots and make them answer, but no killing. And most of Mellie's friends are on the other side of her, and there are going to be some people, I can already tell based on the out of character conversations that have been happening since the event, that some people are going to change sides. There are going to be some people who are on the kill everybody or kill all the Lightfoot side right now who may calm down and cross the line, onto the other side by the time we get to the next event. I don't think Sal's going to be one of them. Sal is pretty much Sal's a very, very emotional character, and I love Sal so much. And that's kind of like their driving force right now, is they are angry and they are sad, and they are, Sal is just lost their home, and this is personal for Sal. The Lightfoots attacked Sal's home, Sal's family, and I totally get that. And I can also see how characters are going to be falling back on old habits that are very isolating. Colvier, the host, community, and isolation. Mellie is part of the reason that Mellie is against killing is because now she's a mutant, and she's got this rage going on inside as a result. I mean, she was already angry before, but it wasn't all consuming. It didn't consume her. But now it's growing, and she's afraid of it. And so opposing the wholesale slaughter of the Lightfoots is her way of desperately trying to cling to some of her humanity. And also, as a result of this, now that this thing has happened, she's even angrier than she was before. I can see her stepping back and isolating herself from even the people that she's become close to, including Sal, because she's afraid of how that anger might show through. And I can see characters, Sal's players already told me a little bit about how Sal is going to react, and I can see how maybe Crow will react, and and I've had a little bit of a discussion with Indigo's player. We are very, very excited because Indigo and Melly are on opposite sides of this ideological divide. We're both very excited to have our characters interact over this because we're both very good at compartmentalizing, and we both understand that even though our characters are upset at each other, that we as players are having a great time. So I've been talking for over an hour now, all told, because this video is just over 53 minutes. And of course, I think I had like 20 minutes before the phone stopped me. So I'm going to stop now. There was so much that happened in this event, and it was so chaotic, and it was so wonderful, and it was so brilliant. And I'm really, really excited for E4. We don't know yet when it's going to be because staff is still looking for a place to have it. They're still looking for a place to book that has everything that we need, and that's going to allow us to do everything we need to do. But I am super excited. Cannot wait. And yeah. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. And just remember that I love all of you and that you are made of stardust. Bye.